Sometimes Burning Crusade quests and NPCs had some pretty, pompous writing. This was the case for this particular minor character as well, a member of the Magar. When he introduces himself, he says, "The Magar are survivors. Survivors of a fallen dynasty. Survivors of the Red Pox. Survivors of a shattered world." When I first read that, I thought the survivors of a fallen dynasty part to be really odd and to not really make much sense when referring to the Magar as a whole. Then the character said his next line, and you could imply that he was referring to himself with that part, hence the title of the video. Quote, "I am Joran, son of Gul'rok, last of the lineage of Deadeye, war chief of the Bleeding Hollow clan." As stated, Joran was the leader of the Bleeding Hollow orcs among the Magar. In case this wasn't obvious already, I'm talking about the Magar of Outland, not those of the alternate Junor. Inferring from his quest dialogue, he was probably too young to have personally seen the First and Second Wars, since he calls those times, quote, "the times of our fathers." It's also fairly likely that he and the rest of the Bleeding Hollow under him escaped being corrupted because they were afflicted by the Red Pox and were quarantined in the Grand. On that note, it's hard to say what the relationship between Joran and his father Gul'rok was, if any. I imagine that, like, say, Garrosh Hellscream and Draenor Sourfang, his father left him to be quarantined while Joran was very young. Now, Joran is not mentioned at all in the Beyond the Dark Portal novel, where Gul'rok returns from Azeroth to Junor and eventually meets his end, which was something that at first glance might seem slightly odd, because in the very same novel, Grom Hellscream thinks about Garrosh, and we even have a scene where Garrosh appears. However, we also know that Gul'rok had a reputation of a somewhat ruthless chieftain, in that, according to the Last Guardian novel, he killed 3 of his sons and 2 of his grandsons who tried to challenge him for leadership. And of course, we know from the Lords of War series that Gul'rok killed his own father. So perhaps he also didn't particularly care much about Joran. However, as shown by the little speech he gives, Joran cared and is proud of his lineage, something which also puts him in contrast to Garrosh at the time of Burning Crusade. We also see that Joran is missing an eye, which probably means that he partook in the traditional Bleeding Hollow ritual to remove it in exchange for a vision of his own death. Now, the Bleeding Hollow are somewhat interesting among the Magar of Outland in that, until recently, they lived separately from the hub at Garadar, in a village called the Bleeding Hollow Ruins at the edge of Terakar Forest. The village is known as Gul'rok on the alternate Junor. Since these aren't the traditional lands of the Bleeding Hollow clan, those are in modern-day Hellfire Peninsula where the corrupted Fell Orcs of the Bleeding Hollow reside, I think it's safe to assume that Joran led his people to settle in the ruins of Gul'rok at some point after the destruction of Junor, which would also speak to his pride as the leader of the Bleeding Hollow clan. He is the only one among the Magar, until Garrosh learns about his father from Thrall, who leads his own clan as a somewhat separate and autonomous entity within the Magar. Now, by the time of Burning Crusade, the Magar Bleeding Hollow were attacked by surprise by the Boulder Fist ogres and were forced to flee to Garadar. There, Joran was infuriated by Garrosh Hellscream's lethargy, including the fact that he refused to lend the Bleeding Hollow assistance, and turns to us the players for aid. I also found him to be interesting because during the quest you do for him regarding the Boulder Fist attack, he never lost his head or became too enraged by events to not think clearly. Instead, even when you report to him that the Boulder Fist attacked the village just because, his thinking in the quests that follow is, the ogres only understand might and brutality, they probably attacked because they saw that Garrosh was weak and unwilling to act, so in order to keep the rest of the Magar safe and to bring justice, go kill a bunch of them. And afterwards, when he learns that the leader of the Boulder Fist is the half-orc, half-Draenei Lantrasaur of the Blade, he sends you to try and peacefully convince him to leave. Sadly, there's not much more to say about Joran since this is the last quest he gives, and his last direct involvement in any events, ending kind of abruptly. When you finish the quest chain, you are told to return to Garrosh, not to Joran, who just scoffs at you. So this was what little I can say about Jorun Deadeye, the son of Gul'rok. Leave any thoughts in the comments below, and I will see you all later. Farewell.